Hello, how are you today? Today we're going to do overhead and overhead allocation. Now, to start with, if you remember, the overhead we talk about is something that we have done before, and I'll just bring it back to your memory. In the case of the factory I spoke to you about before, or in the earlier lessons, we had raw material which comes in, which gets converted to finished goods. To get that happen, to convert from raw material to finished goods in a factory, you have to add labor, and the other costs are the overheads that we add. Now, the overheads primarily are indirect costs, and the reason being, raw material can be seen, measured, and valued in the finished goods. The labor that goes into the finished goods also can be accurately measured and valued. But the indirect costs, just by the definition of the word indirect, cannot be measured and valued in the finished goods. Now let's take a look at another thing that we have done before. If you remember, where am I again? Back to this one, I guess. Now this one here. If you remember, that is the milk that's coming in to be converted to be butter. Now, if you recall, that is a direct cost because that's raw material. Then you have this emptying into machinery. These machinery are the overhead because they are getting used up, and the use up cost, which is the depreciation, is a part of the overhead. You can't measure the quantity of machine usage in the butter produced. Let's take another place where you can measure is when you have this labor. The labor comes in. Let's see the labor. Maybe I missed that. Okay, the labor will come further down. If you remember, yep, the labor involved in getting this machine to work, that is a directly measurable quantity because it's clocked on a timesheet and we can measure it. Whereas the overheads and the indirect costs, such as for this let me see, I'll bring that up for you somewhere. A fellow has got the uniform that he wears up here, maybe for that up here somewhere. Those and also other overheads which cannot be indirectly, which are indirect but cannot be measured accurately and valued, they form part of the overheads. And that's what if you remember, those are the overheads that are there. How do you find out for every kilo of butter that comes out, how much of this overhead should be assigned, allocated to that? How do you do that? And that's what we're going to do today. This is about how do we first allocate the overhead that we don't know exactly how much it is. We know the total of it across the whole year, which of course you can find out by the total cost for the whole year. Take away the direct material and the direct labor. That will give you all the overhead that have been incurred. But how do we know how much of that goes into the product? Now, it's easy after everything is done. Of course, you just divide one and then allocate equally. Maybe that's one possibility. But more importantly, you have to be able to do it right across the period from the beginning to the end. And therefore, the Australian Accounting Standards and Australian Taxation Office requires that this allocation of this overhead to the product, allocation of this overhead that you incur, all the indirect costs that you incur, as it happens, should be allocated to this product in a defined, predetermined method, and that's what we call overhead allocation method. Now we'll be doing it right now today. So what we have going to do is first we're going to find out how the overhead is estimated, because you will never know the actual overhead until you come to the end of the period, for the right across the end of the period. However, if you can estimate what the overhead could be across the period, and maybe by some mathematical allocation process keep allocating for each product being manufactured, then you will have somewhere close to being pretty accurate in relation to overhead allocation. Well, that's about it. Let's go and check what we have learned in the textbooks. Okay, bye bye.